Hey everyone, how's it going? Mr. Vacation here, back at it again 1 week late to the party with Tropical Frickstorm and Fairyland Codex. Let's get into it. So Fairyland Codex is the fourth studio album from Australian rock supergroup Tropical Frickstorm, or better known as Tropical Heavier F-word Storm, which I'm not going to say at least this early on in the video. This album has a very lush, experimental art rock genre type feel. It's laced with potent lyricism and radical vision through and throughout. I think this album puts on full display the masterful capability of pivoting sounds between tracks while still maintaining this very coherent and potent dynamic vision. I think it's a true testament to the production and artistic vision and the craftsmanship on display throughout every single member of the team responsible for putting this album together. Some elements that really stood out to me, particularly, were the vocal dynamic between Gareth Lydiard, Erica Dunn, and Lauren Hamill. I thought it was super potent. I think the harmony and exchange of lead roles in terms of vocals on the track diversifies the palette in a way similar to the latest BCNR album. I thought it was an interesting choice and a potent one in terms of it just being, I thought, a home run of a success. Felt like it added so much depth to each of the tracks in ways that were interesting and enhancing through and throughout. I think it's also important to mention the string work across the board on this album. The bass guitar, the violin at moments, and most importantly, the electric guitar, which again would be another nod to Gareth Lydiard, who is the lead guitarist for this album. It's very apparent that his, in particular, vision for this project was essential to its development, as the electric guitar and the acoustic guitar certainly is mesmerizing for each and every track, and plays an extremely pivotal part in the cohesion of the album through and throughout. I think this album wouldn't be what it is without the role that particularly the lead guitar plays throughout it. So that's definitely a nod to Gareth, in my opinion. Um, Certainly, I think this album is a home run success, uh, due not just to him, but to the mastery that every single member of this band has put on display. In terms of tracks to talk on, there are just so many. I feel like all of them were really good. Opening up, I want to talk on Goon Show. This track just straight up has aura, in my opinion. I really love the like heavy, thick, rhythmic synth that kind of mirrors the drums and the beat throughout the track. It's very dynamic. It's heavy. You got these like vocal harmonies that kind of build tension in the bridge as it's going. It's got this very like Coheed and Cambria mixed with like Anarchy Club aesthetic to it that I just really dig. Obviously the guitar plucking in this track is just on point. And then from a production standpoint, there's just these ambient little sounds that are inserted throughout. And it just all like cohedes together to build this very like dark, heavy tension that just all enhances the song really well. I will say as an aside, kind of by coincidence, I think it really helps the track. I shouldn't say it helps the track, but it certainly is poignant that this track and this album came out within days of what transpired between America and Iran. And I don't want to really dig into the semantics of that, but obviously this album has been in the works for a long time, but for it to kind of drop within days of what happened is really interesting and extraordinary in its own right. And for a track like this to land basically in the same weekend, it was just it had me really taking a step back as a listener, and really shed some different lights on things. Just a little aside, uh going back to the track analysis, I felt like the chorus is super hooking for this piece. I found myself like singing and humming it pretty frequently, from day to day, still do so quite often a week later. Interestingly, at the end, the track has kind of a quiet let out in order to transition into stepping on a rake, which is an interesting choice in regard to this track, which has kind of a very hefty presence to it. But it ends up working a lot in part to the mastery of the musicians and the artistic vision that's going into everything. But it was an interesting choice, in my opinion. Like I said, it pans out just fine. The track is phenomenal. But I did think that was an interesting choice. So, Stepping on a Rake, it's obviously quite tonally different from its predecessor track on the album, Goon Show. But thanks to the transition, it really smoothly slips right into the spotlight as the next track on the album. This one features just gorgeous guitar play. It's got soothing vocal harmonies, and then it's got this very quiet, subtle, like tambourine play, which just barely kind of holds the rhythm for you throughout the piece, which I thought was a really nice choice for the rhythm aspect. I think with this track, everything just fits right to give this piece and provide the listener like a nice touching exhale on what is a very heavy like first leg of this album, with the first two tracks being really like laced with tone and poignant lyricism and kind of like heavier message. I think it's a welcome and kind of nice palate cleanse as you move into the next leg of the album, which is kind of like a tonal step back a little bit for a period of time. I think it's good for the pacing. And I think it's for that reason that they kind of understood that Stepping on a Rake needed to be here in terms of album progression. And so that's why they go out of their way so much to make this transition happen. And so I think that's the advocation for why the kind of like interesting choice on Goon Show for the transition and then the placement of Stepping on a Rake here. I think the respite is welcome at this point in the album. So I'm an advocate of this track. I think it's a great track and well placed on the album. All right, with Dunning Kruger's Loser Cruiser, this track is just super unique. It is chock full of beat switch ups. It's easily the most groovy piece on this project. I love every single guitar that is in place on this thing. I think the most poignant of those is the electric guitar work. It's particularly smooth and jazzy, and it kind of coaxes and croons you into this like sway as you listen. I'm gonna forever have this like memory of being on the beach, listening to this and tapping my toes in the sand with my AirPods in, kind of swaying my head and getting side glances from my family members who have no idea what I'm doing as I'm just like jamming out to this thing and completely not caring and not regretting it. Yeah, this was just a very daring artsy track that just absolutely pays off. I think it's super dynamic and interesting. I think on a whole, music just absolutely wins with this track's existence. It's just so unique, and I'm a huge fan. Yeah. So Bloodsport is like the 1-2 punch of Loser Cruiser. It transitions basically straight out of it. The guitars basically continue to be excellent and build off of the groundwork. The bass progression develops, and then instead of getting like the beach switch ups that you were getting in the previous track, instead, what you do is you take the grooviness that you were getting, and then there's like an injection of meaning and basically like very cutting meaning at that, as the narrative in this track is one where basically the 1% bubble kind of pops. And the implication here is that there is this like fever dream that everybody else in the 99% have, whether they're willing to admit it or not, where they get to watch as the 1% struggles and is forced to live like everybody else, or maybe even worse than that. And there's just this like the ambiance is just this like very celebratory, predatory excitement throughout the whole vibe of this track. It's just this darkly dynamic piece that sonically is just a whole vibe. It's jazzy anarchy. Yeah. Gotta love it. So then you get Bye Bye Snake Eyes, which is a really interesting track in my mind. This has more of a Western kick to it. The guitar, I mean, I feel like every track it's just guitar, 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 guitar. This one is awesome because not only do you get guitar, that's excellent, but you add in some violin to the string department, which is more than welcome here. In fact, in the middle of the track, you get this really awesome, basically stanza where the violin accompanies the acoustic guitar, and it is just so heavenly. It is gorgeous, and that stanza will like stay in my head forever. It's so good. But the drums are also really poignant in this track. I felt like it was just a really good sonic mix up for the palette of the album. I just continue to be impressed with basically every single track this album threw at me, and this one was just one of the ones in particular that I felt deserved a little extra a bit of a nod. I think overall what you're looking at here is a truly dynamic album. It's laced with talent, creativity, passion. It's addictively re-listenable with, potent hooks, driven lyricism, basically all the elements that you need to have an album that's going to outlive, its year or maybe even its decade. Which is why when I think about the baseless rating for this piece, I would have to go with the Transcendent 10.